This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. If you have an author, service, or product that you would like to introduce to Storyworks Roundtable listeners, let us know. Email info@storyworkspodcast.com. For just $25, you can sponsor an episode of the Storyworks Roundtable and tell our listeners about your service or product in your own words. This week's Roundtable is brought to you by book formatting specialist Drew Avery. Now, Drew, I understand that you are an author, an indie author, and that you got into formatting book services because it's something that you struggled with for a while when you were starting out with getting your own books into the market. And what do you like about formatting books? Why did you decide to go professional with that particular task?
Well, I enjoy helping people. Sometimes paying it forward is really beneficial. I'm not a big karma person, but I'm a big advocate for not having other people struggle with the same things that you struggle with. Mm-hmm. So as I learned formatting and as I got more proficient at it, I found that more people were seeking out my services. Mm-hmm. And the word was kind of spreading about it from there. And I enjoy giving people a little bit of a stress reliever in terms of them not having to spend hours struggling to do something that they might not be comfortable with.
Right.
Or wasting time that they could be using for writing or marketing or taking a course to get better at their craft. All those things kind of make me feel good in my heart to help people out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have found that my greatest frustration with the indie publishing process is that learning curve. When I've got to take on a new task like formatting, that isn't my area of expertise. So I really think people should focus their time and energy on the things they excel at and then outsource those other tasks. So it's great that you can offer that to all of our listeners. Now, where can people find you?
They can find me at drewavery.com, which is DREWAVERA.com. And if they're interested in the book formatting, it would just be /book-formatting.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about the work you do?
Well, I think most people, they buy an author service, and once they receive the finished product, they think they're done. But I like to help people along the way. Sometimes back matter needs to be updated with an updated list of books that the author has put out. Mm-hmm. And I usually provide updates to those for that formatting free of charge, so people don't have to worry about trying to get a software program to open up the files and do it all themselves.
Right.
I work with people quite a bit that do box sets as well, and I'll include that whenever we negotiate for manuscript formatting. So,
wow, that's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for sponsoring the Storyworks Roundtable and for sharing what you do with our listeners. Wow.
Well, I'll jump in with how I've been doing it because it has a lot to do with that process.
Okay, great.
So goals-wise, I had very specific goals in terms of what I wanted to accomplish. Very much on the count side, like I wanted to finish the short story that is currently sitting, waiting for me to get back to it. And I wanted to at least have drafted, if not also finish this novel project that I was in the middle of pre-writing when the year turned. Well, I only just started drafting the novel. And I felt very frustrated by that. Like I felt like I just don't have the time. Like, where am I going to find this? And where am I going to find that? And, everybody does that to themselves. It's like you have these expectations, and then when you fail to meet them, it's all about, I don't have the time for this, and I don't have the time for this, and I'm overwhelmed, and too much is going on, and you just kind of at least for me, I shut down a little bit. And I had that moment probably early June where I was just like, okay, what needs to happen for me to feel like I'm accomplishing not necessarily specific goals, but the things that I want to be accomplishing, like we were talking about how should I live my day in order to feel good about what my life is leading up to? And so I decided to wake up early, which makes my brain hurt. So I'm getting up like an hour before anyone else in the house is awake, and that hour is my time. And I don't necessarily tell myself I have to accomplish any one given thing, but I sit down at my desk and I do what I want to do for that hour, and it becomes a very productive time for me. And when I have that hour in the morning, all of a sudden all these little gaps start opening up in my day, and I'm like, oh, I just throw this in there and I'll throw that in there, and I end up having like a day in completion that I'm very satisfied with. So, it's not all necessarily writing goals, but I might, get the chores in the house done better than I would have if I didn't have that hour, because I would have been tired, and, in the wrong mental space, or, I just all these different things. And I am such a systems person, and I'm finding this out about myself more and more. It's stupid, like what you think works for something, and then you're like, oh, it won't work for something else. For example, I have for the last 4 or 5 years created weekly grocery lists, meal plans. I do freezer meals. I do all these things around food. So it's effortless. It's easy. I never have to think about food except for once a week. Done. I'm like, why does that not cross over into other parts of life? So I'm trying to build those kind of effortless, like, this is just this time where I just do this. Period. And not worry about so much what comes out of that as much as just the fact that I'm sitting there and I'm doing it. So that said, I'm making really good progress. I also am handwriting. I hold my notebook. Because what I have found is that Aria is playing and she doesn't need me. I have 10 minutes. I can get 150 words handwritten. And the next morning, I sit down at my desk. I have my notebook sitting there. I can transcribe it into the computer, and that gets me jump started, and then I just keep going. And then I write the last sentence into the notebook, and then I have it with me all day long. And and so it's just been a really good way to interject my writing into everything else that needs to be going on in my life. So I don't feel like I've made it, right? But I feel like I'm putting in place processes that I'm hoping will eliminate that frustration barrier to where I'll be like, okay, I got this. Like, again, not so much I'm gonna finish this, but it's like, make progress. Things are happening. I am moving forward, which is really important.
That is important. That's fantastic. And I love your notebook and that you're writing the last sentence in there so that it's transitioning you from the computer to the notepad to the notebook. So no matter what space you're in physically, you've got the ability to work on your project. And that reminds me of Carly Tressel-Olson's notebook process where she kept kind of a little log every day, right?
Well, and what I'm finding too is that the way my brain works, and again, I've been a journaler for years, so why I didn't think about this beforehand, I just don't understand. My brain will flip into creative mode with a pen and a piece of paper. Instantaneously. You put me in front of a computer, it takes me 3 to 5 minutes to reread stuff and kind of download and like figure out what I'm doing, and then I can start going. It's really interesting to see that juxtaposition and how that works in all the little bits and bobs of my day. So
I think one of the real keys to succeeding at things that we desire is self-awareness. And it's amazing what you've done there, where you've become, obviously something has tipped you over, has flipped the switch and said, I need to get up earlier. So that's good. But it's not you just got up early. You've noticed things that work for you in other aspects, other contexts, and then cross-contextualize them. And I think there's no more powerful skill for a human being than to cross-contextualize learning. It's how we learn as a baby, as a real young person. You don't just learn. The example I used to use was, we all of us can work out how to open a door just by having opened one once, because the human mind will just, well, that's a problem, I can get around it.
Right.
And, we have the capacity to change the tools that we have, our hands, for example. So as a baby, you might learn about opening a door that has a knob. But the first time you come up against a sliding door, you're going to look for the knob and you're going to try and pull it. Mm-hmm. But it won't be very long before that kid's got that sliding door open.
Right.
You know, because we understand that it's a hole in the wall and it must lead to something. And so there's all that contextualization that says, there's got to be another way around this. And yet we dog ourselves with, damn, I haven't got this chapter done yet. Why isn't that happening? And failing to look at the fact that you've created all these systems around meal plans, and it's, you know. So once again, I think we're looking at inputs and not outputs, it's very inspiring. It's really interesting. If you look, I like the idea that for people that are listening, they could think about what is it that they're already reasonably good at, that they have fairly well streamlined in their lives, and can they apply that to their writing practice? So that it's like, you know, with Alida being excited about process, what can you do to be more excited about process, and what can you do to bring things that you already do relatively well? So that's brilliant. Well done.
It is.
I'm very, very impressed.
Now I'm just hoping that, like, in a couple months, I'll be able to say, not only is the process really working, but I'm actually finishing things. And it's not, you know, like, but again, it's that it will happen if I just keep sitting down and doing it. It will eventually happen, and I just have to trust the process that I'm putting into place will eventually lead to the goals that I'm trying to achieve.
Right. And I love that your process that you developed your new process for helping you get your writing done from looking at other areas of your life and how you've systematized those and how well that works for you, and that it came from what you do around meal planning. I have tried many times over the years to adapt somebody else's process to my life, and you said getting up early, and so I tried for months. I tried this 5 a.m. thing where you get up and you spend 10 minutes in meditation and 10 minutes in gratitude and 10 minutes stretching and 10 minutes whatever, and it adds up to an hour. And I wound up hating it because 10 minutes wasn't enough meditation to quiet my mind and meditate, and it wasn't enough time to get my thoughts down journaling, because when I journal, I like to really write. And so, you know, I wound up kind of beating myself up. What's wrong with me that this works for thousands or millions of people and I can't make it work? And what I finally had to do was say, no, what makes me happy and what feels productive to me is just sitting down and writing. And it's okay if I don't meditate first thing in the morning, and it's okay if I don't do gratitude first thing in the morning, and it's okay, you know. So I think we get blinded by what's out there working for everybody else and what's the latest and greatest thing. And we forget to look at ourselves and say what works. So I think it's fantastic that you looked at your life and found the way to make the system. Yeah, well, me too. You know?
Yeah. So my question would be then, what system do you have already in place that lets you know when something's finished or that lets you complete something? Because that's the next step then. Because you're going to you've got body of work and you've got body of work behind you. So now you're content creating. And if you have a desire at some point to have a project completed, you know, whether it's a published book or just a story that you feel happy with, that will be the next system to apply, I think.
Totally.
Right. Well, and for me, it's about the habit of, or the system of that time, you know. So for me, it's like get up and make my coffee and I work on my book. And sometimes that's drafting longhand, but sometimes I hit a breaking point where I need to do more research before I can continue drafting. So when I finish the manuscript, I will keep the system in place of this is the first thing I do every day, but it'll be typing the pages, then it'll be formatting the book, then it'll be, you know, whatever stage that is in, it'll be to keep the habit intact, even if I'm doing a different task. And I might get far enough down the road, kind of beyond revision, where now I'm writing in the morning on a different book, but in the afternoon I'm, doing the publishing work on this book. And so for me, the next thing is just don't let the end of the project end the habit or break the system.
I think, for right now, for me, it's like I'm finding that productive hour. And like what I do with that hour will probably end up changing to suit the project. But as long as I have that productive hour, as it seems so small, but you can get a lot done if you're focused and you're attentive to what is needed. So we'll see what builds. We'll see. Yes. I'm curious to see too. So.
There have been some studies that suggest that even really incredibly productive human beings, some of the more successful entrepreneurs, reckon they only have about 2 hours of really high output work every day. Yeah.
I could have told you that from the moment, when I was working my office job, I knew exactly what my 2 best hours were in the day, because I would fly through things and then I would spend the rest of the day just kind of getting stuff done. It was just a completely different feeling to what you end up with. And my mornings are definitely my most productive time. So if I start early with being productive, then my mindset is such that I can continue to be productive through the day. But if I don't, if I sleep in, if the baby wakes me up instead of my alarm clock wakes me up, I feel behind, I feel sludgy, I feel awful, and then nothing gets done all day long. So it's finding that way of getting my own self going to where I feel good when everything else starts going on in the day, that then allows me to keep trucking along, even when my best hours are behind me.
So how about you, Robert?
I was trying to deflect all the attention.
Oh, well.
It's more of the same, really. I mean, I've been... it's not as if I'm not writing, but I've not made much progress on the work in progress. The middle part of the book's really bothering me, and it's procrastinating about it. And I have made some insight progress, but not written any words for quite some time. Probably since maybe even late last year on that particular project. I've written other words on things that I'm practicing for my craft, which has been one. And also part of my freelance work is writing thousands of words a week in copy describing books. So I'm very close to the craft, which has been great, because every time I go back to writing, I can feel that my prose and my first drafts are just far stronger than they've ever been. They feel cleaner. They feel, the flow comes. But mechanically, I'm not really writing words. I reviewed it, and it was interesting because I was looking at what I'd done in terms of outlining and scenes and story arc, and I liked part of the first part, and then because I'd struggled with part of the early middle, I'd skipped to a later part and written something a bit more fantastical that is, sparking me sci-fi wise, and was definitely to do with the overall plot. And then when I got to that, I thought, oh, this is quite good. This for a first draft, I quite like this. And I was quite surprised at how the writing had changed as well from the start, as you often do when you go and look at the start of a book. Written. And then I had the insight, I know what the ending is. I've always known what the ending is. Maybe I should write that first, because it is the core scene of an action story, of a sci-fi action adventure, is going to be the big standoff at the end. And since I know what that is, I could probably do that. And we were speaking a bit earlier about Rachel and Erin's 2 to 10K thing, and she says if you find yourself writing a scene that's just drudging, then how do you think the reader's going to experience it? Right. So just ditch it. And I'm sure it's your advice as well. And I found that to be true. It's there's something clearly wrong about that. So this whole, and I have a wonderfully supportive wife who just wants me to get this book done. And she says, why don't you just do an hour every day and do this in the morning and do that? Look, I'll make dinner. I mean, she's just perfect, and I still can't do it. So there's a big black cloud over it, and it's bothering me. And
so have you ever written out of order before, like what you're talking about doing?
Yeah, and part of this book I have already done that, and I have done that once or twice. But normally I write linearly, so it is quite different. But because it's the second in a series, there's a lot more sort of loose-endy things that I want to both continue from book 1 and not finish until book 3 anyway. And then some things I might want to wrap up from book 1. So it doesn't really matter if I'm writing a bit out of order, because if there's one thing I am very good at, it's chunking and tracking. So I can go back and in revision fix up most of that, and then editor will pick up the rest, or not the rest, but any glaring holes. But I was thinking when both of you were talking about process, I'm incredibly task-driven when it comes to the daily priorities of things that pay the bills, because I've been self-employed for, almost 30 years.
Right.
And more recently, in the last 3 years, because of financial hurdles, I've had to take part-time work. And I, as you know, I left that in April. So it's given me all this time back. And I haven't been very productive with, I've been productive on the things that pay the bills.
Right.
But a book is who knows whether it's going to pay the bills or not. You don't do it for that. You shouldn't be doing it for that anyway, even though there is a path to that if you're a fast writer these days, I believe.
Right.
And definitely that will be one of the byproducts that I'd love to have is a legacy. And in my mind, I've got this idea that, I want to have left some legacy of a collection of sci-fi novels, or it doesn't even have to be sci-fi, I don't really care. But that's one of my loves. But, good books, just for whatever reason. I don't even know what the reason is. I just maybe because that's how I grew up. I grew up with wonderful stories, and I'd like to leave some wonderful stories behind. And then my business head comes on and says, well, that an artistic legacy has passive income potential. There's a whole new marketplace and a new avenue open to writers now. So if I get busy with it, then there's that too. So I just feel like there's a whole pile of pressure on me. I've got a supportive partner who wants to get it done. I've got me with this big black cloud over this middle bit. I've got the idea that I should. This is the shoulding thing again. Be doing
yes.
this because it's an opportunity open to writers right now. I hear this in other podcasts. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Yes.
Eye roll for everyone on audio. We just did the biggest eye roll.
Which it is probably a reasonable, it's probably axiomatic. So the big question comes down to finding those areas of life that I'm very good at that I could transfer across and turn into some habit stacking that will actually work on inputs and not outputs. Because at the moment it feels like as I talk, I'm thinking probably what you're hearing is me talking all about outputs and goals and nothing about what I'm doing on a micro basis.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think something you said that stood out for me, Robert, was about wanting to write the books for your own self and maybe for legacy reasons as well. This is a driver for you, a deep desire or passion of yours. So, you could look at the meta, sort of the meta motivator, and how you live your day and what that's going to add up to in terms of how you live your life, as opposed to the micro motivators of paying the bills and getting stuff done and satisfying other people and such. And so, it's like we were talking about with me, I'm driven by process, not I get done what I need to take care of those micro motivators, like paying the bills and taking care of my dog and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what really drives me and makes me happy is the meta stuff where, am I doing something today that I will find fulfilling, that at the end of my life, I'm going to look back on and go, yeah, that's what I was about, I think
that's probably the nail. You're hitting the nail on the head there. I think that I am really good at getting the necessary done. I can be a real machine when it comes to that. I'll fly through in task mode, and I'm nothing. I'll hold this up and explain it for anybody on audio. This is it's an action list, right? So this one's probably a few days old now, but what you can see on there are just lists of things that with the highlighter on them means they're done. So I used to cross them out. So that I used to put in the early days of doing it, I used to do it with a black texter, and then I couldn't see what I'd done, which bothered me because I'd be on my head go, oh, did I pay that electricity bill? So literally they're that task related. But I think what I struggled to introduce into that system is things that fuel a dream, and so this has probably always been me, very very task related. Yeah, I'm quite capable of in the long run, like we were saying about achieving in 5 years. Definitely been a high achiever, and I've had my down times. We've had financial hurdles, we've had changes in life, we've had all sorts of things.
Right.
But in general, I've bounced back from those. I wouldn't say where the bounce has been slow, but this bounce has felt very slow with this particular book. So I think it's a matter of keeping that dream alive. So maybe you're right. I've got to actually chunk back up and say, what am I doing to push the dream along today?
Yeah. And I think, we talk about motivation and goals and process, but another word we might look at is fulfillment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And creative writing is fulfilling for me. And that's why I'm process oriented instead of goal or reward or punishment oriented. I think is the process is fulfilling. So if we are getting lost in the details of all the mundane stuff we have to do and not looking at our fulfillment part of life, then we can kind of lose sight of our goals, but our big goals are meta, passion-driven, personal, soul-oriented, whatever you want to relate them to, those goals. And so for us as writers, that is often about our stories.
Yeah, the actual writing process doesn't give me a lot of joy. I really enjoy revision and making things better. And I think it's because I have a completion drive. I just cannot stand things that are undone. Drives me nuts. And that's what makes me a good task completer during the day. And I think that's why a longer project like a novel makes it easier for me to put off, because I only get the satisfaction from completion. I don't get much satisfaction from the actual process, whereas you do. So I need to find a way to reconnect with that. I do, when, like Kathryn was saying, when you get in the flow, like you're surprising what you get done when in an hour when your head goes around it. Then I find I come away from that where my shoulders hurt and my hands ache, and you don't notice it because you've been really in the story. That's probably the only time where I could say I find the creative part of it satisfying.
Right.
But again, it tends to come at the end where I go, oh, that was great, So I have such a connection to completing something being the point at which I will feel satisfied. Remember I was talking about this, I'll be happy when. And it's part of that psyche, and I need to change. I need to find a way to be happy with in process.
So is part of your completion drive also problem solving?
Oh yeah.
So maybe just chunk your book down into smaller goals, so problems completing a chapter or solving that soggy middle problem or refining the storyboard or whatever. So maybe if you have a daily or a weekly goal instead of the great big end goal, your process would smooth out a bit. I think you're right. I think that's it might be a nice reframe around it, rather than I've got to get 500 more words done today or 5,000 more words done today. For me, it could be, what problem do I have to solve in the story now? Which is a nice, it's nicely allegorical to
to the nature of story arcs anyway.
Yeah.
You know, the protagonist has to solve lots of problems in order to, get their needs and wants met.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. I shall reflect on that. So in terms of life goals, this has been a good year, and so that's great. But there's still this thing hanging over me for the current work in progress, and I'd really like to nail this trilogy. And I feel like when I get on a run with it, then it will happen very quickly.
Right.
So it's as if I've been pounding my head against this one brick wall for a long time.
Yes.
But once I find my way around that, it's just all going to tumble out. And I've had that experience before with writing too. So
Yeah.
when you get on the downhill part, it gets exciting because I'm about to complete it. I love completing things.
Wow. All right. So we've.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we all had some good takeaways here. And I love that we've got a goal completion-oriented person, a process-oriented person, and a systems-oriented person here. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, the three of us together could make actually one perfect human being.
Oh, I like that. Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.